Good morning, Your Honor, Commissioners, Elders, and everyone who is gathered here. We acknowledge that this ceremony today is taking place on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Thank you to those nations who allow us to share in this land where we live and work. It is an honor for us today and for the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association to be with you all. The British Columbia Civil Liberties Association is 51 years old. We are Canada's oldest and largest civil liberties and human rights organization, based here in Vancouver and with an office in Prince George. As civil libertarians, we stand for the fundamental right of each person to dignity and autonomy. We uphold the right of people to choose how they want to live their lives, including the right to live according to one's own culture and values. We stand against the unjust coercion of people by the Crown. We stand in opposition to government action that unjustly takes away the right of people to determine and shape their own future. In the entire history of Canada, there can be no more shocking, tragic, and sustained example of such coercion than the residential school system. The system at its very core, and from its very inception through to its conclusion, was a grave violation of civil liberties and human rights. This injustice sowed seeds that have grown into the weeds that continue to damage people to this day. The weeds of injustice continue to damage and to strangle the relationships between individuals, among families, and across communities. They continue to damage and to strangle the relationship between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. Sadly, as you know, that was the very design of the schools. They were designed to sever the bonds of children to their families and their communities, and they did so by severing their ties to their languages, their cultures, and their land. They were designed to change the relationship between First Peoples and the rest of society by erasing Indigenous culture and assimilating Indigenous children by force into white European Canadian society. In a very real sense, the residential schools were an unspeakable violation of fundamental human rights and freedoms. As the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples observed, very few people spoke out about the fundamental injustice of the residential school system. The harrowing physical, sexual, and emotional abuse and neglect of children, and the systemic racist and colonizing attack on Indigenous culture, identity, and society, generation onto generation. Now, however, we are gathered to speak about this unspeakable injustice. Now the silence is over, and those who have ears to hear can hear the message of this great injustice. We are here to name and to identify this injustice. We are here to collectively bear witness to its awful legacy. I cannot speak for those who have gone before me, but I do know that the reality is that civil society in Canada, including the BCCLA, for years and years, failed to see and failed to understand what was happening and what was being done in our names. As civil libertarians, we should have seen and we should have spoken out sooner than we did. Just as Indigenous people in Canada continue to bear the pain and the ongoing effects of the residential school system, so too have all Canadians inherited this collective responsibility for actions that were taken on our behalf for more than a century. On behalf of the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, I offer to you today that we are sorry for the terrible injustice that was inflicted on Indigenous peoples through the residential school system. We are sorry that we did not see and we did not speak out. We pledge to you our vigilance in using whatever resources we have to oppose violations of the rights and freedoms of Indigenous peoples now and in the future, and we pledge our fellowship with Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada as we walk together along the difficult road of healing and reconciliation. Thank you.